Well, PwC is in the hot seat after the Financial Times called them out after looking at several of their reports that they put out between 2024 and 2026, because in those reports, there were countless examples of completely hallucinated, fabricated material. The industry research was largely bunk. And just to give you an example of some of these things, there was a completely fake, made up framework called the Citizen Pulse. And another one is they cited a 280 follower teenage Medium blogger as validation for JP Morgan's AI strategy. Not a great day for PwC and their research. But the reason I want to talk about this today isn't necessarily to, air PwC's dirty laundry or draw more attention to the situation necessarily, but really to talk about the fact that what happened here, I would contest, isn't really an AI failure, even though everybody's talking about how AI failed and this was a failure of AI for PwC. I would say this is an organizational failure at the core level. And it's largely tied to our absolute obsession with production volume and speed over focusing on actual quality and producing things that generate real human value. Now, over the course of this session, my plan is to walk you through a blueprint of what you can do to fix this today. And I will be completely transparent with you. I am going to mention some of the tools that I have in my toolkit. If you were to go to my website, you would see these tools, the Pathfinder, the AER, How Do People Feel, and Helix. But this episode is not about me pitching my services. My goal is to connect the dots between them because I didn't build these tools to jump on the AI hype train. I built them because I saw this exact credibility and value crash that so many organizations are plowing into and flying right off the bridge a long time ago. And my goal has only been to help people prevent going through that crash or cleaning up the pieces afterwards. So with that, I'm Christopher Lind. This is Future Focused. If you find the content I produce helpful, it would mean the world to me if you would share it with somebody, if you'd tell somebody about it, if you'd send my website along, and if there's things I can do to help you. My goal, like I said, is just to help people be successful and work through this stuff. And when you make mistakes, to help clean up the mess, feel free to reach out. I love chatting with folks. But with that, let's get into this, because the way I'm going to focus this is really kind of break down the different steps. But we have to address the real problem, which is this production obsession. And if you followed my content for long, you know I do talk about this a fair amount. But this right here is a perfect example of this. Big Four consultancy, known for its global research, all the different projects they do. And it's never enough, right? For any of us, we always just want to do more and we want to do it faster. And so we push teams, we push the organization to pump out more. And so when AI entered the room and said, hey, you want to go faster and you want to do more and you just want me to follow your instructions, I'm in for it. And guess what? I don't sleep. I don't eat. I don't breathe. Like, just go, 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 which on the surface feels very tempting. And I will be the first to say I have to push against that tendency in myself to go, great, I could do this. I could chase this now. I could have AI help me with that. I could run this over here. And I'm constantly having to step back and go, hang on a second though. Why? Is this the most important thing? And just because I can, or just because I could go faster, or I could do more, is that actually generating real meaningful value? And right now, that is a step that is eroding really hard as organizations and leaders continue to trade validity and value for velocity. And it is becoming the ultimate casualty, and not just a, oh yeah, that's not a good thing to happen. I mean, we're talking brand equity. If you Google this right now, or you look at any organization that makes one of these catastrophic, I know they would say it's a slip, but this isn't a slip. This is a catastrophic failure of the architecture of an organization, and it shatters brand equity and human trust. And PwC is going to pay dearly for this. And the question will be, are they going to change, or are they just going to penalize the person or people involved in this and get better at trying to hide it and avoid these kinds of whoopses from happening in the future? But the reality is, if your outputs are not grounded in reality, I say this frequently, the physics of business, no matter what AI has done, the physics of business has not changed. The way we execute it, the speed by which we execute, all those things can, but the physics are the same. And so fast execution, just doing things faster and doing more of those things, all it means is you are running at a higher speed off a lot more potential cliffs. And that's not good for anyone involved. So let's talk about, what can you do? What can we all do to try and avoid this digital speed trap? Because that's really what it is. It's a digital speed trap. And the first one is this: we have to focus on what matters most. And that's something that is not, we haven't been struggling with that just as a result of AI. I've been in the corporate sphere my entire career, have worked at all levels of the organization. And I will say, as much as we like to assume that, yeah, of course, why would we do work if we aren't focusing on it? Somebody somewhere obviously determined this was the most important work, right? 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 And when you actually dig into this, a lot of times people are just moving based on an assumption that someone else somewhere did this work. And you can't. And we have to stop trying to generate everything faster on the assumption that, well, the person before this did that work, or the person after me will pick it up if I missed something. Because those steps aren't happening, and everybody is making those assumptions, and things are just flying down the assembly line. And then we don't catch it till things like this happen, till the Financial Times goes, hey, let's take a look at PwC's last 2 years of industry reports. That's 2 years worth of work, completely devastated because nobody caught it till it got off the shelf, off the line, and somebody down the road decided to look at it. And this is exactly what happens when we don't take the time at every step in the chain to make sure we're focusing on what matters most. And this isn't just what happens at the top. Yes, it happens at the top, but it needs to happen at every chain. We talk about humans in the loop. And if you've listened to me, you know I say this a lot. It's not just about having a human in the loop rubber stamping what's being done. It's about having the right humans in the right loops with the right level of decision-making authority to be able to make these stops. And that actually is why I said I'm going to mention things. That's why I architected the Pathfinder pulse analysis that I created. It was for this very purpose, for the fact that I recognize this is not an easy thing to do. And sometimes we're so caught up in our own worlds, in our own little spheres, it's really hard for us to see outside of our box or to even have the mental capacity to stop and think. And so sometimes you need someone else to come in. I'm not saying you always do, but sometimes that's a really important step to say, hey, here is everything that's going on. Or can you look at what I'm doing, and can you also look at what my peers are doing and what else is going on? And can you bring us together and help us understand what's all happening and where might we need to focus our attention, or what are the implications of not focusing here or focusing here, or how do we prioritize that? And whatever you do, that cannot be skipped, and that can't be done once at the big beginning of a project or at the 2026 goal setting time in Q1 and then never revisit that again. This needs to be something that's happening along the way. And so, like I said, if you need help with it, fine, call me. I'm happy to help with that. But regardless of what you do, you need to be really intentional on this piece, because if you don't, everything that follows will only accelerate and break faster, harder, and worse. And so often we're like, we'll get to that later. We'll build, I hate the phrase, we're building the plane while we fly it. Stop it. How do you know you needed a plane in the first place? Now you're in the air, potentially going to kill everybody on board because you decided to wait to get up there to build it, only to realize, oh boy, we turns out we could have just walked, type of a thing. And this is happening at scale. Now, just because you've done that doesn't mean, okay, great, we did that. Now let's move this. You also have to diagnose that gap. Like, okay, we think this, but are we sure? Have we validated this with data? And if this is the case, do we know what the friction points are that are happening? Because the reality is, are there times people are just mindlessly going through the motions? Sure. But for the most part, people who know what they're doing, intelligent people you've hired, hopefully you're hiring intelligent people to do their job well. They want to do things well. And a lot of times there's subtle friction, there's hidden friction you don't know about. And so after you identify what these things are, you need to make sure you're validating those gaps with data and actually examining, okay, if those things are there, we validated them, they're there with data, but why? Why has no one fixed this? Because if the data says it, chances are somebody knows or somebody is experiencing this and they're not just like fine with it. So what's going on? Why is that happening today? And how then do we get from where we know we need to go through these gaps? How do we fix these gaps? How do we remove this friction so we can get to where we need to be? And that can't just be a guess or an assumption or because you heard from one person that this is the problem. You need hard data on that human reality. And so often we get caught up in that, well, did the system work? Well, maybe the system worked. Maybe your operations aren't working. Did the process work? Maybe the process doesn't work. But maybe the process is engineered to work in a vacuum, but you're dealing with an organization filled with people and that vacuum doesn't exist. And this, again, is exactly why I created the AI effectiveness rating. And I just launched, if you haven't seen it, go to howdopeoplefeel.com, which is designed to be qualitative intelligence. I built a qualitative intelligence engine around this. And the AI effectiveness rating is to say, hey, we are spending billions on AI. The tech is actually pretty mature, works really well. Why are we getting no real value out of this? And the reality is, it's because we're dealing with people who are behind it and who are doing this. And so we don't know, do they have the actual skills? Do they have the behavioral capabilities to actually use the technology that they've been given? Or are we just distracted looking at how many times are people logging into Copilot or Gemini, or how many tokens did we burn with Anthropic? If you listen to my podcast 2 weeks ago, I talked about the whole AI scoring system. So often we're obsessed with these metrics that don't matter. And that's why I designed these tools to help organizations go, don't you want to care about the data that actually is going to remove the friction that's preventing you from getting there, and validating that the problems you think you've identified that are preventing you from being able to do the things you want to do are actually real problems? So you're not investing in solutions that don't fix problems. I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with somebody who said, no, that doesn't make sense, or I don't want to do that. It's just so often we're on this speed hype train to be able that we don't take the time to actually do it. Or we personally sometimes don't have the capability to build the tools or do the thing to do it. That's why you hire people, or that's why you bring in technology to do it. It's why I built these tools, because I recognized it was a real gap that people went, I don't disagree with you, Christopher. I just don't know what to do about it. And I did. So I said, well, I'll build something that'll help you fix that. Once again, am I saying the only way this will ever work is if you use Christopher Lynn's proprietary technology and approach? No, I'm not stupid. I know there's other ways you can do this. But what I will say is what I've built is really effective and it works. And so if this is a gap for you, well, then call me. If you know that this is something you should do and you know how to do it, you've just been putting it off, stop putting it off. Do it now. Focus on what matters, get clear on that, and then move into the data gap and friction points. Figure out what is actually preventing you from getting there. Once you've done that work, then, and only then, can you actually say, okay, now what? Now let's actually do something about this so that we can move across this continuum, close the gaps, achieve the things that we've said are the most important while not getting distracted with the noise, while at the same time removing this friction and this gunk that has been preventing us historically from getting here. We're done kicking this can down the road. We're going to address it. We're going to get to the things we need to, and we're going to move along the way. And that is exactly the kind of thing that, again, I'm mentioning myself. That's why I built Helix project system. And it's why I built the Future Focus Academy, because I saw that people have all these AI tools that they don't know how to make it run the projects, the programs, the things they're doing more effectively. Everybody's off doing their own thing with their chatbot. Intelligence is spread all over the place. People are doing work scattered more than ever before. And the human capability, they go, great, I know where I sit now, but I don't really know what to do about it. Well, you need real development. And so, again, whether those are the right solution for you or you know what the right solution is, you need to actually have proven ways of getting there that you've actually tested and measured. And so just as an example with Helix, when I was building it and testing it, I was running this with organizations saying, does this actually measurably save time? And how do we know? Does it measurably help us make better decisions because we have greater intelligence into our system? Are we getting more value out of the AI tools that we have because now we're engineering it in a way that actually works? Are people measurably improving? If you go through the Future Focus Academy and your AI effectiveness score isn't moving, well, that's a problem because that means you're not developing. And so in your organization, you have to have those things. But the one caveat I'll add to that is you actually need to keep tabs on those step 2 things and continue revisiting those step 1 points. Because what matters most now, or what matters most at the beginning of 2026, may change. There may be shifts in market dynamics. There may be shifts in priority. There may be a new opportunity that you see that didn't exist that you need to capitalize on. And you may need to lock in on that and say, hey, I know we said this is what the most important thing was. We're actually going to pause that. That part gets skipped a lot. Everybody's like, how do we do more? No. You don't. You say, how do we pause that or put that on the back burner because we need to shift priorities? That has to be a continual evolution. And I can say in my own work, this is something that I'm regularly doing where I'm assessing. Here are the most important things that I have those shifted? And some of them have. That's what led to me revamping the AI effectiveness rating and building out how do people feel. Because I saw the capability, I knew I had the skills to do it. I saw the gap and I said, I actually need to pause what I'm doing, shift some focus and rebuild these things right now so they're at a stable state and they're production ready and enterprise grade. So I did it and I made that the priority and I pushed everything aside so that I could do that. I actually diagnosed the gap just like I described, identified what the friction points were. I built it and engineered it. And then I came back and said, okay, now those are ready. I've done some testing to data and validate that. All right, now we're at a stable state. Now I'm revisiting my focus on what matters most and reshifting my priorities and going back to the execution along the way. And that's something that has to be this continuous cycle that you're moving through along the way. Now, the first thing I will say is this. I understand and can empathize with the fact that what I described can feel like a lot. It can also feel impossible. I also recognize that now that I'm working independently on my own with organizations, I can move a lot faster and have a lot more domain control over what I'm doing than I did when I was the CLO or head of system architecture at GE. I recognize that. And yet, in the consulting work that I'm doing, where I'm working with large global multinational companies, big enterprises, it's possible. So if you're hearing what I'm saying and going, that's great for you, Christopher, as you're operating in this environment, that's not the environment I'm in. I can't get traction on anything. I can't get anybody to listen to any of this. I can't get access to these things. Yes, you can. You can. You may have to do it differently. You may have to approach things in a creative way, or maybe not get it exactly how you want. That's what I would say is probably one of the biggest shifts in moving onto my own is there's just less bureaucracy, but that presents its own set of challenges because now I can pursue anything. Well, that can also be equally dangerous. So be careful that just because you think, oh, well, I'm in this environment, then therefore it's inherently good. Maybe not. But I think my point there is whatever environment you're in, these 3 steps of focusing on what matters, validating and identifying the friction gaps with real, measurable, provable data, then executing against it and regularly. Don't look at this as a waterfall process. Think of this as a true agile process where you're shifting and moving through these things at all times and building systems in place that are continually checking on these things, continually looking at that, and then building architecture in place to help you stay on top of it so you don't become a PwC that goes 2 years down the line producing industry reports only to get called out and have 2 years worth of your credibility dunked in the trash overnight because you didn't catch it early on and it just churned down the line. Now, that's a lot, and I recognize that. So here's what I would encourage you to do. There's 3 things that no matter who you are, no matter what level you're operating at, no matter what seniority you are or what size organization you're in, every single one of you listening to this can do this. The first thing I would encourage you to do is stop what you're doing and actually take the time. Make time. Don't tell me you don't have time. We all have the same 24 hours. It has to do with how you focus your time. Take and make the time to look at yours and your teams, depending on if you're a manager, look at your outputs this week and genuinely ask yourself, if you used AI in those outputs, okay, I can tell you from the AER data, the biggest gap right now is impact results. Like it's by far the lowest gap. So pause and ask yourself, did us using AI on this save us time, improve quality, deliver a better outcome? Or did we just add noise? Did we just waste more time going back and forth with an AI tool because we had access to it? And establish a hard rule. AI synthesizes, organizes, pulls things together. Humans are the one that verify and contextualize that, because even the most brilliant AI models do not understand human experience. They've never lived anything. And so you need people there. But that requires you to stop and actually take a breath long enough to examine, hey, get off the treadmill and look at this. The second one I would say is benchmark your behavioral fluency. It's so easy right now, whether you're looking at an AI score that says, AI was involved in 88% of this output or whatever. Get past that. Don't look at the end result and just say, was AI involved? So stop tracking seat time, token usage, number of logins, hours spent in AI. Actually benchmark your people's capability using behavioral diagnostics. You're welcome to use mine. I'd invite you to reach out to me and say, hey, Christopher, can I go through it? I just want to experience this for myself because maybe what you've designed is the solution that we need right now. So that you can actually say, hey, these are the behavioral disciplines we've got to work on because we're lacking in them right now. And as a result, it doesn't matter what we're using AI for. We are not getting the most out of it because the behavioral disciplines required to get the most out of it are lacking in our teams. And so focus on real, measurable, observable human behaviors that come through in the people that are doing the work, including yourself. The third and final one is make sure you have clear ground truth feedback loops in place. Before you just jump to your next major initiative, or like I did, you identify what you believe is an opportunity. Make sure you're actually capturing real qualitative sentiment. You need to understand don't just look at a culture survey or ask somebody in a meeting, is everybody good with this? Of course, people are going to say yes. You actually need that real qualitative sentiment to understand the human friction points. You need to understand what people are doing and why they're not working on these other things that maybe you think are genuinely more important. Is it that they don't know? Is it that they don't feel they are more important? Is it that they are aware of friction points you aren't? You need to find that so that you can continue to go through this cycle and continue shifting your priorities, continue identifying and fixing friction points, and actually executing on the most important things that are going to drive the greatest results and raise the tide for everyone involved. You, your business, your customers, and all the employees that work for you. It is possible to get a win-win-win situation when you put in the time, the energy, and the effort. But you've got to be willing to do that. So with that, don't be PwC. Don't wait 2 years and say, we'll figure this out later, only to look back and go, boy, this would have been a lot less of a mess had we taken the time to do those 3 things Christopher said we should be doing on a regular basis. And before you go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, either refocusing all your resources to build it yourself or not do it at all, reach out. Maybe I can help. Maybe the skills and the experience I have can help you be more successful with what you're doing. But in either case, hang in there. And I hope you found this helpful. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of 2026 plays out. Feel free to check out christopherlin.co or How Do People Feel. You'll get a feel for the different things that I have to offer. And remember, focus on what matters most, diagnose the gap and the friction points, and then actually execute, upskill, and continuously pulse along the way. You do those things, you'll be able to navigate this AI age seamlessly. With that, I'm Christopher Lind, and this has been Future Focused. We will see you on the other side.